Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie The Karate Kid, 2010, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. When The Karate Kid was announced for a remake in 2010, there were questions, doubts, and a lot of curiosity. The original 1984 classic had cemented itself as a beloved underdog story, one that defined a generation. So, how do you take a tale so ingrained in pop culture and make it fresh, relevant, and impactful again? The answer? A new setting, a new hero, and an entirely different cultural backdrop, while keeping the heart of the story intact. This time, the film takes us across the world to China, a land of deep tradition, breathtaking landscapes, and a martial arts history unlike any other. Instead of a young American teen learning karate in California, we meet Dre Parker, played by Jaden Smith, a 12-year-old kid who is uprooted from his life in Detroit and thrown into an unfamiliar world where everything is different: the language, the culture, and most of all, the way conflicts are settled. At first, Dre tries to blend in, but it's clear that he is an outsider in every sense of the word. He doesn't know the customs, he doesn't speak the language fluently, and worst of all, he quickly finds himself the target of a group of merciless school bullies, trained in kung fu. These aren't just kids who shove and taunt, they humiliate him, they hurt him, and they make sure he knows that he does not belong. What makes The Karate Kid, 2010, so engaging is the sheer helplessness Dre feels at the beginning. He is not a natural fighter. He is smaller, weaker, and completely outmatched. Every time he tries to stand up for himself, he gets knocked down harder. His mother, played by Taraji P. Henson, is full of love and encouragement, but she can't protect him from this. Enter Mr. Han, played by the legendary Jackie Chan in a role that is completely different from his usual action-packed performances. Mr. Han is not the flashy, high-energy martial artist we are used to seeing. He is quiet, worn down by life, and carrying a sadness that lingers in his every movement. He sees Dre struggling but does not immediately step in. There is wisdom in his silence, a patience that only a man with deep experience can have. But when the bullying goes too far, when Dre is pushed to his breaking point, Mr. Han finally reveals what he is capable of. In one swift, expertly choreographed scene, he effortlessly takes down Dre's bullies. Not with aggression, not with anger, but with complete control, using their own energy against them. It is in this moment that Dre sees something he has never seen before: power that does not come from rage, but from discipline. Dre begs Mr. Han to teach him kung fu, but Han refuses at first. He knows the path is not easy. Kung fu is not about fighting. It is about balance, about control, about understanding yourself. And Dre? He is far from ready. The training sequences in The Karate Kid, 2010, are among the most iconic parts of the film. But they are not what audiences expect. Instead of traditional drills and fight training, Mr. Han assigns Dre a simple but frustrating task: pick up your jacket. Put it on. Take it off. Hang it up. Over and over again, Dre follows the instruction, not understanding why he is being forced to do something so tedious when all he wants is to learn how to fight. And then, one day, everything changes. Mr. Han stops him mid-motion, redirects his movements, and suddenly, Dre realizes he has been training all along. His muscles have memorized the motions, his reflexes have been sharpened, and the discipline has already started to shape him. This moment is what makes The Karate Kid, 2010, so powerful. It is not a story about learning how to throw punches. It is about learning how to control yourself, how to master your own body and mind. As Dre progresses, so does the challenge ahead. The bullies are not just schoolyard thugs. They are trained by Master Lee, a harsh, unrelenting kung fu instructor who teaches his students to show no mercy. This sets up a climactic battle, one that can only be settled at the legendary kung fu tournament, where Dre will have to face the very kids who tormented him. But this time, he will be ready. The final act of the movie is where everything comes together. The lessons, the hardship, the pain, and the triumph. Dre steps onto the mat, no longer the scared boy who arrived in China, but a warrior in his own right. The tournament is brutal. His opponents are stronger, faster, more experienced, and yet he refuses to back down. The final showdown between Dre and his most relentless bully is nothing short of breathtaking. The tension is at its peak, and with every strike, every block, it becomes clear that Dre has earned his place here. But then, just when victory seems within reach, his opponent fights dirty, injuring Dre's leg in a brutal attack. The crowd is shocked. His mother is terrified. Mr. Han watches in silence. But Dre does not quit. He stands up, even though his leg is in agony. He chooses to fight, not because he wants revenge, but because he refuses to let fear win. And in the film's most unforgettable moment, he executes a stunning, gravity-defying final kick that secures his victory. As the crowd erupts in cheers, as Master Li is forced to acknowledge defeat, as Mr. Han gives Dre the proud nod of a teacher who has watched his student truly grow, it becomes clear what this movie is really about. It's about transformation. It's about finding strength when you feel weakest. It's about respect, not just from others, but for yourself. The Karate Kid, 2010, takes everything that made the original special and reimagines it in a way that feels fresh, exciting, and deeply emotional. The performances are stellar. Jaden Smith brings raw energy and vulnerability. Jackie Chan delivers one of the most heartfelt roles of his career, and Taraji P. Henson grounds the story with warmth and humor. The cinematography captures China in all its breathtaking beauty, and the fight choreography is intense, real, and exhilarating. But at its core, this movie is about something timeless, the journey of an underdog who refuses to stay down. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into The Karate Kid, 2010, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more movie breakdowns, behind-the-scenes insights, and deep storytelling analysis. There are countless stories out there that deserve to be explored, and we're just getting started. And remember, Kung Fu is not about fighting. It's about balance. Moving to a new place is never easy, especially when you're a 12-year-old kid leaving behind everything you know. Dre Parker never asked for this. His life in Detroit wasn't perfect, but at least he understood it. He had friends, a school he was familiar with, and a neighborhood that felt like home. But now, he's in China, a place where everything feels different. The streets, the language, the food, even the way people look at him. His mother, Sherry Parker, is thrilled about the opportunity, a fresh start with a new job, but for Dre, it's something else entirely. It's exile. From the moment they land, it's clear that Dre doesn't belong. The streets of Beijing are bustling with people moving with purpose, speaking words that make no sense to him. The city is vibrant and alive, but to Dre, it's overwhelming. His mother is optimistic, trying to assure him that they will adjust. The city is vibrant and alive, but to Dre, it's overwhelming. His mother is optimistic, trying to assure him that they will adjust, but for a kid like Dre, adjusting is not that simple. It doesn't take long before he meets Mei Ying, a bright and talented young girl who instantly captures his attention. She is kind, friendly, and unlike anyone he's ever met before. But just as quickly as their friendship begins, trouble finds him. Chang, a skilled kung fu student, watches Dre interact with Mei Ying, and it's clear he doesn't like what he sees. Chang is not just any bully. He is precise, disciplined, and dangerous. When he decides to put Dre in his place, it isn't a shove in the hallway or a few harsh words. It's a brutal, calculated beating. Dre tries to fight back, but Chung moves with an ease that makes it seem effortless. Every attempt Dre makes to defend himself is countered with precision, and before he even understands what is happening, he is lying on the ground, humiliated. That moment changes everything. Dre realizes that he is alone here. In Detroit, he knew how to handle himself. He could talk his way out of situations, joke his way into friendships, but here, none of that works. Here he is weak. At school, things don't get any better. Chang and his gang make sure Dre knows that he is not welcome. They corner him, mock him, make him dread every moment he has to spend outside. He stops wanting to leave the apartment, stops trying to make friends. His world shrinks, fear dictating his every move. And then, the tournament flyer appears. A kung fu tournament. Dre isn't sure what it means yet, but he sees something in it, a chance, maybe, a way out of this nightmare. One day, after an especially humiliating attack, Dre reaches his breaking point. He lashes out. He doesn't care anymore. He throws a bucket of dirty water at Chang and his gang, an act of defiance that he knows will have consequences. And sure enough, they come for him. Chang and his friends chase Dre through the streets, their movements disciplined, their speed relentless. Dre runs for his life, dodging through alleys, weaving between crowds, knowing that if they catch him, it's over. He makes it to his apartment complex, but there is no escape. They have him cornered. And that's when everything changes. From the shadows, Mr. Han steps forward. At first glance, Mr. Han is just the quiet maintenance man, a face Dre has seen around the complex but never thought twice about. But in this moment, he is something else entirely. With calm precision, Mr. Han intercepts the attack, effortlessly countering Chang and his gang's aggression without throwing a single punch. The way he moves is unlike anything Dre has ever seen. He doesn't fight with anger. He redirects, controls, turns the bully's own strength against them. And within moments, the fight is over. Chang and his gang retreat, defeated, not because they were beaten, but because they were outclassed in a way they cannot even understand. Dre is in awe. He has never seen anything like it. In that moment, he realizes that Mr. Han is not just a maintenance man. He is a master. And Dre knows what he has to do. He begs Mr. Han to teach him kung fu, to give him the ability to defend himself, to make sure he never has to feel helpless again. But Mr. Han refuses. Kung fu is not about fighting, he tells Dre. It is about control. About understanding yourself, your body, your surroundings. But Dre doesn't back down. He wants to learn. He needs to learn. And so, Mr. Han takes him somewhere unexpected, to the kung fu school where Chang and his friends train. There, they meet Master Li, a man whose presence is as intimidating as his philosophy. His students do not fight for discipline. They fight to dominate, to destroy, to show no mercy. When Mr. Han requests that Chang's attacks on Dre stop, Master Li offers an alternative. If Dre wants peace, he must earn it in the tournament. Mr. Han has no choice. He accepts the challenge. Dre is stunned. A tournament? He isn't ready for that. He can't even throw a proper punch. How is he supposed to compete against Chang and his gang when they have been training their whole lives? And that's when his training begins. But it is nothing like he expected. Mr. Han does not teach him how to punch or kick. He does not teach him how to fight. Instead, he gives him a simple task. Pick up your jacket. Put it on. Take it off. Hang it up. Dre is confused. This isn't kung fu. He wants to learn how to defend himself, not how to clean up after himself. But Mr. Han is unshakable. Again and again, Dre repeats the motion. Pick up the jacket. Put it on. Take it off. Hang it up. Days turn into weeks, and still, the training does not change. Dre's frustration grows. He feels like he is wasting time. He wants to quit, but something keeps him going. And then, one day, everything shifts. Mr. Han stops him mid-motion. He redirects Dre's arm, and suddenly, Dre's movements flow into something different, something powerful. He has been training all along. Without realizing it, Dre's body has memorized the motions. His reflexes have sharpened. He has built strength, discipline, control. The lesson was never about the jacket. It was about training the body without realizing it. About understanding that Kung Fu is in everything. For the first time since arriving in China, Dre feels something new. Confidence. He may not be ready for the tournament yet, but for the first time, he believes that he will be. The tournament is coming. The date looms over Dre Parker like a countdown to war, but for the first time since stepping foot in China, he is not afraid. He trains every day under Mr. Han, learning more than just how to fight. He is learning control, discipline, the patience that separates a reckless fighter from a master. And with each passing day, something inside him shifts. He is no longer the helpless boy who was beaten in the streets. He is no longer the foreign kid who doesn't belong. He is stronger, smarter, ready. But strength alone isn't enough. Dre still has to prove himself, to Chang, and to the world that has dismissed him since the moment he arrived. And as the days turn into nights filled with relentless training, the weight of what is coming settles into his bones. The moment of truth is approaching, and there is no turning back. One evening, after an exhausting day of drills and sparring, Dre finally sees a side of Mr. Han he has never seen before. The quiet, disciplined mentor who has guided him through this journey is not just a teacher. He is a man carrying his own pain. Dre stumbles upon Mr. Han's personal shrine, a collection of memories frozen in time. Photographs, a car covered in dust, a past that refuses to fade. And then he sees the truth. Mr. Han lost everything. His wife. His child. A tragic accident that shattered his world. Dre watches as Mr. Han relives the moment, practicing the same kung fu techniques he once used to control his life, now using them to battle his own grief. The strongest man Dre has ever met is still broken inside. And for the first time, the roles shift. Dre becomes the teacher. Without hesitation, without words, Dre mirrors Mr. Han's movements, training alongside him, not to fight, but to heal. This is what Kung Fu is. Not just fighting. Not just winning. It is about balance. About finding peace within yourself. The bond between student and teacher is unbreakable now. They are not just preparing for a fight, they are fighting for something bigger than victory. Finally, the day arrives. The Kung Fu tournament. The energy in the air is electric. The stadium filled with competitors trained to be warriors, each one looking to prove their dominance. Dre steps onto the mats, his heart pounding, but he does not let fear consume him. He has trained for this. He is ready. The matches begin, and Dre's progress is undeniable. The boy who once couldn't throw a proper punch now moves with precision, his technique sharpened by weeks of relentless training. One by one, he defeats his opponents, using everything Mr. Han has taught him, not just brute force, but skill, patience, and control. The crowd watches in shock. This foreign kid, this outsider, is holding his own against fighters who have trained their whole lives. But Chang is waiting. From the sidelines, Chang watches every move Dre makes, his face unreadable. His master, the ruthless Master Li, watches with cold eyes, giving instructions not just to win, but to destroy. Then it happens. One of Cheng's teammates, following Master Li's cruel philosophy of no mercy, delivers a brutal illegal attack on Dre. The crowd gasps. The referee hesitates. Dre crumples to the mat, clutching his injured leg, the pain searing through him. The match is stopped. It should be over. His mother rushes to his side, pleading with him to withdraw, telling him he has nothing to prove. He's made it this far. He has already shown everyone that he is more than what they believed. But for Dre, this is not about proving something to others anymore. It's about finishing what he started. It's about not running away ever again. Mr. Han kneels beside him, knowing what Dre is feeling but also knowing the risk. A single kick to that leg could end everything. But when he looks into Dre's eyes, he sees it. The fire. The refusal to quit. The spirit of a fighter. Mr. Han performs a healing technique, massaging the damaged muscles, allowing the energy to flow again. The pain is still there, but Dre does not waver. He stands. He limps toward the mat. And the final match begins. Dre versus Chang. The moment the tournament has been building toward. Chang moves with calculated aggression, striking hard, fast, but Dre does not fall. He counters, evades, forcing Chang to chase him, forcing him to fight on Dre's terms. The crowd roars with every exchange. This is not the same Dre Parker who was humiliated on the school playground. This is a warrior. And then, Chang sees his opportunity. He targets Dre's injured leg. The pain is excruciating, and for a moment it looks like this is the end. But Dre refuses to surrender. And then, the moment of pure magic. Dre positions himself, one final stance, one last move, the legendary Cobra Kick. A technique that seems impossible, a maneuver that requires absolute control, balance, and precision. The crowd holds its breath. Chang charges. And then, Dre leaps. His leg, the one that should not even be able to support him, lifts into the air in a perfect strike. His foot connects. Chang collapses. The stadium erupts. The match is over. Dre Parker has won. Not just a tournament. Not just a fight. He has won his place in this world. The boy who arrived in China feeling like an outsider has earned the respect of everyone watching, including Chang. As Dre stands victorious, Chang, once his tormentor, bows to him, a silent acknowledgement not just of defeat, but of respect. And as Mr. Han looks on, his expression unreadable, it is clear. This was never just about kung fu. This was about honor, growth, redemption, and most of all, becoming something greater than anyone ever believed you could. Dre Parker never wanted to move to China. He never asked for a fresh start in a place where everything, the language, the culture, the way people fought, was different from what he knew. But the moment he steps off the plane in The Karate Kid, 2010, his fate is already shifting. He is no longer just a kid from Detroit. He is an outsider, an underdog, a boy who will be tested in ways he never could have imagined. Dre is not a natural fighter. He doesn't have the strength or skill to stand up to Chang, the disciplined and merciless bully who makes sure he knows his place. He doesn't even have the confidence to try. But what Dre does have is heart. He may be afraid, but he refuses to be broken. He may not know kung fu yet, but he knows resilience. And that is what makes him such a compelling character. From the beginning, Dre is someone who relies on words, on charm, on his ability to talk his way out of situations. But China is different. Words don't protect him here. His usual tricks don't work. He is small, vulnerable, helpless, and that realization hits him harder than any punch ever could. But Dre does not quit. Every time he gets knocked down, he gets back up. Every time he is beaten, he finds a way to keep going. And that is what sets him apart from his bullies. Not just that he learns kung fu, but that he refuses to let the world tell him he is weak. And then there is Mr. Han. At first glance, Mr. Han is just the quiet maintenance man, the man who fixes things in the background, unnoticed. But the moment he steps in to defend Dre from Chang and his gang, it becomes clear, he is more than what he appears. Mr. Han is not just a kung fu master. He is a man who carries deep pain. His past is tragic, his world built around a wound that refuses to heal. He has lost everything, his wife, his child, and he lives in the shadows of that grief. And yet, in Dre, he sees something. He sees the same stubbornness, the same fire, the same refusal to stay down. And against his better judgment, he takes Dre under his wing, not just to teach him kung fu, but to teach him control, patience, and balance. Mr. Han's teaching methods are unconventional. He does not give Dre what he wants. He does not show him how to fight. He shows him how to move, how to think, how to understand that kung fu is not about violence. It is about knowing yourself. And in doing so, he begins to heal. Teaching Dre is not just about preparing him for a tournament. It is about restoring something in himself, about remembering what it means to be a teacher, a guide, a protector. Then there is Chang, the antagonist, the rival, the one who embodies everything Dre is afraid of. Chang is not just a bully. He is a trained fighter, disciplined, powerful, and unwavering. He does not show mercy because he has never been taught mercy. Under Master Li, he has learned that strength is everything, that to show weakness is to lose. And yet, beneath his cruelty, there is something else. There is doubt. There is fear. Because Chang, for all his skill, has never been challenged the way Dre challenges him. Dre is not just an opponent. He is something Chang does not understand. He does not stay down. He does not accept defeat. And that shakes Chang in a way he never expected. Their final battle is not just about winning a trophy. It is about respect. And when Dre stands victorious, when Chang, the boy who tormented him, who humiliated him, who tried to break him, bows in respect, it is more than just a moment of sportsmanship. It is an acknowledgement. That Dre Parker, the boy who didn't belong, has earned his place. And Mr. Han, watching it all, sees something he has not seen in years. Hope. Making The Karate Kid, 2010, was not just about reimagining a classic. It was about bringing a story to life in an entirely new setting, with fresh challenges, unexpected surprises, and behind-the-scenes moments that made the journey just as memorable as the movie itself. From Jaden Smith's intense training to Jackie Chan's emotional performance, and even some unexpected incidents on set, the making of this film was filled with fascinating details that most fans never got to see. One of the most intriguing aspects of The Karate Kid, 2010, is that, despite its title, the movie doesn't actually feature karate. The original 1984 film focused on the traditional Japanese martial art, but this remake shifts the story to China, making Kung Fu the primary discipline instead. So why wasn't the film called The Kung Fu Kid? The answer is simple. The title, The Karate Kid, was too iconic to change. Even though the fighting style had been switched, the name was a legacy, something instantly recognizable across generations. Jaden Smith, who was only 11 years old when filming began, went through an insanely intense training regimen to prepare for the role of Dre Parker. He didn't just learn the basics of Kung Fu. He trained for hours every day, practicing alongside real martial artists and stunt professionals. Under the guidance of Wu Gang, a highly respected martial artist, Jaden learned everything from proper stance and footwork to the impressive high-flying kick scene in the final tournament. By the time shooting started, he was performing many of his own stunts. But learning Kung Fu wasn't just about looking good on camera. Jaden took it seriously. He didn't just want to act like he knew how to fight. He wanted to truly understand it. And that dedication didn't go unnoticed. Jackie Chan himself was impressed, later saying in interviews that Jaden had the potential to become a real martial artist if he continued training. Speaking of Jackie Chan, his role as Mr. Han was one of the most unique performances of his career. Known for his fast-paced action and comedic timing, Jackie had to completely shift his style for this film. Mr. Han was not the typical energetic, wise-cracking mentor. Instead, he was quiet, restrained, and carried deep emotional weight. One of the most unexpected moments in Jackie's career happened while filming the car scene, the heartbreaking moment when Mr. Han reveals the tragedy of his past. This was a huge departure from Jackie's usual roles, and when the cameras rolled, something happened that even he didn't expect. He cried. Jackie Chan, the legendary action star who had spent his career performing death-defying stunts, was brought to tears in a role that required no fighting, no jumping, no explosions, just raw emotion. It was so powerful that the entire crew was silent when the scene ended. The weight of that moment didn't just change how audiences saw him as an actor, it changed how he saw himself. Filming in China came with its own set of challenges and surprises. Many of the breathtaking landscapes and historical sites featured in the movie were real locations, including the iconic Great Wall of China and the ancient Wudong Mountains, a place deeply rooted in martial arts history. One of the most demanding sequences was filmed in the Forbidden City, a place known for its strict regulations. The production team had to go through an exhaustive approval process just to be able to shoot there, as the location is considered one of China's most sacred cultural sites. Even while filming, the crew had to follow strict guidelines to avoid damaging any part of the ancient structure. But perhaps the most stunning sequence was the one leading up to the final tournament, the training scene in the Wudong Mountains. The moment Dre stands on top of the mountain, mimicking the cobra's movements, was as real as it looked. There were no green screens, no CGI, no special effects, just Jaden Smith, standing on a rock ledge, surrounded by endless mist and mountains. The shot captured the raw beauty of China, and for many, it was the most visually striking scene in the entire film. Of course, no production is complete without on-set mishaps, and The Karate Kid, 2010, had its fair share. Jaden Smith, dedicated to doing as much of his own action as possible, took a few painful hits along the way. During one particularly intense training session, he accidentally struck Jackie Chan in the face. The crew froze, expecting Jackie to be upset, but instead, he laughed it off, joking that Jaden's punch was getting stronger. Jackie, however, wasn't immune to injuries himself. Despite his experience, one of the more challenging aspects of the role was that he had to hold back. For years, Jackie had been performing high-speed, dangerous stunts, but Mr. Han wasn't supposed to fight aggressively. His style was defensive, controlled, subtle. That meant every movement had to be precise, every counter had to feel effortless. And yet, even though Jackie was careful, he still managed to hurt himself. During the famous fight scene where Mr. Han defends Dre from the bullies, Jackie executed a perfect series of blocks and redirects, but at one point, he twisted his wrist just slightly wrong. He didn't let anyone know at first, pushing through the scene, but later, he admitted that he had to ice his wrist for days. Another fascinating behind-the-scenes fact was how much influence Jaden's father, Will Smith, had on the film. Will, who was also one of the producers, wasn't just a silent figure in the background. He was actively involved in Jaden's training, pushing him to take his role seriously. At one point, Will even trained alongside Jaden, going through drills with him to help motivate him. The tournament scenes, which served as the film's climax, were among the most grueling to shoot. The young actors playing Dre's opponents were real martial artists, and while the choreography was carefully planned, there were still moments when the hits felt real. The final battle between Dre and Cheng was filmed over the course of several days, with multiple takes required to get every movement just right. And Jaden? By the end of filming, his legs were bruised, his body was sore, and he had never felt more exhausted in his life. But he did not quit. Just like Dre, he pushed through, proving that the spirit of the underdog wasn't just something in the script, it was real. Perhaps the most unexpected twist of all came after the film was released. The original Karate Kid star. The original Karate Kid star, Ralph Macchio, who played Daniel LaRusso in the 1984 version, was initially skeptical of the remake. Many fans of the classic film felt the same way. Could this new version really capture the magic of the original? But when the film finally hit theaters, something surprising happened. Audiences loved it. The movie was a massive box office success, earning over $350 million worldwide, far exceeding expectations. Even more surprising, Ralph Macchio himself saw the film and gave it his blessing. While he acknowledged that it was different from the version he starred in, he respected the new take on the story and praised Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan for making it their own. Ultimately, The Karate Kid, 2010, didn't just retell an old story, it brought it to a new generation in a way that felt fresh, exciting, and powerful. It honored the legacy of the original while standing on its own as a beautifully crafted film. And perhaps the biggest testament to its success? Years later, when people talk about The Karate Kid, they don't just mean Daniel LaRusso anymore. They also mean Dre Parker, the kid who learned that Kung Fu wasn't about fighting, but about balance. From the moment The Karate Kid, 2010, was announced, the weight of expectation was placed upon its shoulders. The original 1984 classic, a beloved underdog story about a bullied teenager finding strength through discipline, had become legendary. The question lingered, could this remake recapture the heart and soul of the original, or would it simply be another forgettable reimagining? What makes The Karate Kid, 2010, stand out is how it both respects the foundation of the original while forging its own unique identity. This is not a film that simply follows a template. It takes the core themes and reinvents them in a new cultural setting, introducing elements that make the story fresh, relevant, and deeply emotional. The decision to move the setting from California to China was not just a simple aesthetic choice. It fundamentally changed the story's emotional depth. Dre Parker is not just a kid moving to a new school. He is an outsider in every possible way. He does not speak the language. He does not understand the customs. He is entirely alone in a foreign land where even basic social interactions feel like obstacles. This setting raises the stakes in a way the original never did. Daniel LaRusso in the 1984 film was an outsider, but he was still within a familiar culture. He could talk his way through situations, make friends who understood him, and navigate school life in a way that still felt somewhat familiar. Dre, on the other hand, has none of that. When he first arrives in Beijing, the world around him is a maze of unfamiliar signs, customs, and traditions. The loneliness he experiences is profound and deeply relatable. He is not just adjusting to a new school. He is learning how to survive in a world that does not seem to want him. This is what makes his interactions with Mei Ying so important. She is the first person who makes him feel like he belongs, even in the smallest way. But their budding friendship immediately creates conflict, leading to Cheng's relentless bullying. Cheng is not just a schoolyard thug. He is disciplined, trained in kung fu, and conditioned to see violence as dominance. His master, Master Li, teaches a philosophy that is the antithesis of what kung fu is meant to be. He teaches his students to hurt, to show no mercy, to break their opponents completely. This makes Cheng's attacks on Dre feel far more dangerous than traditional bullying. Dre isn't just being pushed around. He is being beaten with intent, methodically broken down by someone who views him as weak and unworthy. The pivotal moment that changes everything is Mr. Han's intervention. When Dre is cornered, exhausted, and unable to fight back, Mr. Han steps in, not with aggression, but with control. The way this scene is filmed is crucial. Mr. Han never throws a punch. He does not attack. He redirects, counters, and neutralizes the situation without ever striking first. It is a perfect visual representation of the real philosophy behind kung fu. Not to fight, but to defend, to control, to master one's own energy rather than relying on brute force. This moment is what draws Dre to Mr. Han, not just the fact that he can fight, but that he fights with wisdom, patience, and restraint. The dynamic between Dre and Mr. Han is what elevates the film beyond a standard martial arts movie. Mr. Han is not just a teacher. He is a broken man carrying a past that has left him in isolation. The most emotionally devastating moment in the film, the car scene, is a turning point not just for Mr. Han, but for Dre as well. Up until this point, Dre has seen Mr. Han as a strong, wise, almost invincible figure. But here, for the first time, Dre sees his teacher as a human being. The scene is quiet, heavy, filled with grief. Mr. Han sits inside his ruined car, replaying the moment that changed his life forever, the accident that took his family. There are no words needed. The pain in Jackie Chan's performance says it all. This moment resonates beyond just Mr. Han's personal tragedy. It ties into one of the film's most powerful themes, healing. Mr. Han has spent years trapped in his grief, unable to move forward. In teaching Dre, he is unknowingly allowing himself to heal, to find purpose again, to connect with someone in a way he has not allowed himself to for years. Dre, in turn, learns that kung fu is about more than fighting. It is about balance, about discipline, about understanding yourself. The film's tournament climax is a culmination of everything Dre has learned, not just in technique, but in character. The way Chung is portrayed in the final fight is significant. He is not just a ruthless villain, he is a product of his environment. He has been raised under the strict and unforgiving philosophy of Master Lee, conditioned to believe that strength means never showing weakness. But when Dre stands up, injured but refusing to quit, something changes in Chung. For the first time, he sees an opponent who fights not out of hate, not out of anger, but out of pure determination. The moment Dre lands the final Cobra kick, it is not just a physical victory. It is a statement. Chung, who has been taught never to respect weakness, bows to Dre. It is one of the most powerful moments in the film. Chung is not just acknowledging defeat, he is breaking away from the toxic mindset that has been drilled into him for years. He is realizing, perhaps for the first time, that strength does not come from cruelty. And Mr. Han, watching from the sidelines, sees something deeper. He does not just see Dre winning a fight. He sees a boy who has grown, who has learned what true strength is, who has fought not just for victory, but for himself. And in that, he finds his own balance again. Critically, The Karate Kid, 2010, was met with a mix of praise and skepticism. Some believed it could never live up to the original, that remaking such a beloved film was unnecessary. But others saw it for what it truly was, a story that took the spirit of the original and reinvented it in a way that felt fresh and meaningful. Jackie Chan's performance was universally praised. He brought an emotional depth to the role of Mr. Han that had never been seen in his previous films. His portrayal was quiet, restrained, and deeply powerful. Jaden Smith, despite being a young actor stepping into an iconic role, delivered a performance that felt genuine. His dedication to the physicality of the role, his emotional vulnerability, and his growth throughout the film made Dre Parker a character worth rooting for. The film's themes, resilience, cultural understanding, healing, and finding one's own strength, resonated with audiences worldwide. Ultimately, The Karate Kid, 2010, is more than just a remake. It is a film about transformation. It is about how pain can become strength, how loss can lead to purpose, and how true power is not about how hard you can hit, but how hard you can get hit and still stand up. And in the final shot, as Dre and Mr. Han bow to each other, there is no need for words. Because in that moment, they both know. They have not just won a tournament. They have found balance. Bringing The Karate Kid, 2010, to life was never just about rehashing a classic. It was about reinventing a beloved story, transporting it to a new culture, and giving it a fresh identity that would resonate with a new generation. The journey from script to screen was filled with unexpected challenges, grueling training, and incredible moments of collaboration between the cast and crew. Every frame of the film, every action sequence, and every heartfelt moment was shaped by months of preparation, cultural immersion, and behind-the-scenes experiences that make the movie even more fascinating. When the idea for The Karate Kid, 2010, first surfaced, Will Smith was the driving force behind it. As a producer, he wanted to create a meaningful and authentic film for his son, Jaden Smith, that would allow him to grow not just as an actor but as a martial artist and a person. This wasn't just a Hollywood remake, it was a passion project. But to truly honor the spirit of the original while giving it a new cultural perspective, the film had to feel real, look real, and embrace the world it was set in. That meant relocating the story from California to China, a country with a rich history in martial arts. This decision changed everything about how the movie was made. Filming in China was an incredibly ambitious endeavor. The production team didn't want to just recreate sets or use green screens. They wanted to capture the authenticity of the country's landscapes, architecture, and cultural heritage. This led them to some of the most breathtaking locations in China, including the Forbidden City, the Wudong Mountains, and, of course, the Great Wall of China. One of the biggest challenges was securing permission to film in these historic locations. The Chinese government has incredibly strict regulations about what can and cannot be filmed in certain places, especially when it comes to movies with international productions. Months of negotiations were required to get access to the sites, and even then, the crew had to follow precise guidelines to avoid damaging any cultural landmarks. When they were finally granted permission to shoot at the Forbidden City, the cast and crew had to follow extremely strict rules. Equipment was limited, movement was monitored, and certain areas remained completely off-limits. Every shot had to be carefully planned. But in the end, the result was worth it. The stunning backdrop of the Forbidden City added an authenticity to the film that could never be replicated on a set. Jaden Smith's training for the role of Dre Parker was another monumental aspect of production. He wasn't just learning basic kung fu moves for the camera. He was undergoing intensive, real-life martial arts training under the guidance of Wu Gang, a renowned kung fu master. 4 months, Jaden trained 6 days a week, 4 hours a day. He learned everything from proper stances and breathing techniques to high-flying kicks and fight choreography. By the time filming began, he was able to perform most of his own stunts, including the final cobra kick that stunned audiences. But training didn't come without its fair share of injuries. Jaden suffered multiple bruises, sore muscles, and even a minor leg injury during one of the more intense fight sequences. However, he was determined to keep going. He wanted Dre's journey to feel real, and he knew that meant pushing himself to his limits. Jackie Chan, who played the wise and reserved Mr. Han, was also deeply involved in the production beyond just acting. As one of the most respected martial artists in the world, Jackie had decades of experience not only performing stunts but choreographing them. One of the most fascinating aspects of the film was how Jackie had to adapt his usual style to fit the role of Mr. Han. Unlike many of his previous characters, Mr. Han was not a flashy fighter. He was calculated, controlled, and deeply philosophical. This meant Jackie had to restrain himself from his usual high-energy fighting style and instead embrace a more subtle, defensive approach. One of the most unexpected and emotional moments of the entire production happened during the famous car scene, where Mr. Han reveals his tragic past. Jackie Chan, known for his action-packed performances, was about to deliver one of the most heartfelt scenes of his career. The scene was heavy, a moment where a broken man relives the worst day of his life, replaying the accident that took his family. Jackie had prepared for the moment, understanding its significance. But when the cameras rolled, something happened that no one expected. Jackie Chan started crying. It wasn't in the script. The emotions overwhelmed him in the moment, and the tears were real. The entire set fell silent. The crew, the director, even Jaden Smith, everyone knew they had just witnessed something special. The rawness of that scene, the depth of emotion Jackie poured into it, was something no one expected, and it became one of the most powerful moments in the film. Of course, there were lighter moments on set as well. Jackie Chan, despite playing a serious role, was known for keeping things fun between takes. He would often joke around with Jaden, teach him new martial arts tricks, or challenge the crew to playful sparring matches. Jaden, eager to prove himself, once attempted to sneak up on Jackie and surprise him with a playful punch. It did not go as planned. Jackie, with his incredible reflexes, countered before Jaden could even blink, playfully flipping him onto a mat. The entire crew burst into laughter, and Jaden never tried it again. Another fun fact? The final tournament scene was one of the most challenging sequences to shoot. The young martial artists playing Dre's opponents were real fighters, trained in traditional Chinese martial arts. The fight choreography had to be precisely timed to ensure that each strike looked real while keeping everyone safe. The final match between Dre and Cheng was filmed over several days, with multiple takes required to capture every intense moment. Jaden, already exhausted from his months of training, was pushed to his physical limits during these scenes. By the time the final shot was completed, he collapsed onto the mat, completely drained, but victorious. One of the most iconic moments of the film, the legendary Cobra Kick, was filmed with a mix of real stunt work and wire assistance. While Jaden had mastered the technique during training, the gravity-defying nature of the move required careful execution. The scene took multiple takes to get just right, ensuring that the move looked both cinematic and believable. When The Karate Kid, 2010, finally hit theaters, it surpassed all expectations. Despite initial skepticism from fans of the original, the film became a massive global success, earning over $350 million worldwide. What made it resonate so deeply was not just the action, but the heart. Audiences connected with Dre's struggle, Mr. Han's pain, and the journey of two unlikely souls finding strength in each other. It wasn't just a movie about kung fu. It was about resilience, discipline, and the power of believing in yourself. Even years after its release, The Karate Kid, 2010, remains one of the most successful remakes of all time. And behind every punch, every kick, and every lesson in balance, there was a cast and crew who poured their hearts into making it unforgettable. The world of The Karate Kid, 2010, is more than just a backdrop. It is an essential character in the story. From the moment Dre Parker and his mother step off the plane in Beijing, the setting shapes every moment of his journey, intensifying his isolation, pushing his struggles to the forefront, and ultimately transforming him into someone stronger than he ever believed he could be. Unlike the original Karate Kid from 1984, which was set in sunny California, this version of the story takes place in China, a land with a deep history of martial arts, rich traditions, and an entirely different way of life. The choice to relocate the film to China wasn't just about changing scenery. It was about changing Dre's world completely, making his challenges feel even more isolating and his victories even more meaningful. From the very first scene, Beijing feels overwhelming. The streets are crowded, the signs are written in Chinese characters, and the language barrier is an invisible wall keeping Dre from feeling connected to the world around him. Everything that once felt familiar is gone. This is a city that never stops moving, a place that demands its inhabitants adapt or be left behind. One of the most powerful aspects of the film's setting is how the cinematography reinforces Dre's emotions. The way the city is shot in the beginning, vast, cold, and unfamiliar, reflects how out of place he feels. Wide-angle shots capture the endless sea of people, the towering buildings, and the lack of personal space that makes Dre feel even smaller. But as the story progresses, something changes. Dre begins to understand his surroundings, starts to train, starts to find his place, and the way the city is filmed changes with him. The wide, overwhelming shots become more intimate, the camera moves in closer, and suddenly, Beijing no longer feels like an enemy, it feels like home. The filmmakers made a conscious decision to use real locations, not studio recreations. Every alleyway, every marketplace, every temple was carefully chosen to bring authenticity to the film's world. This was not just a movie about martial arts, it was a film that celebrated the culture, the landscapes, and the traditions of China. One of the most visually stunning settings in the film is the Forbidden City, one of China's most famous historical landmarks. This was not just a backdrop, it was a symbol of power, discipline, and a connection to something greater than oneself. The architecture, the deep reds and golds of the ancient buildings, the sheer scale of the place, it all reinforces the weight of the culture Dre is stepping into. Filming in the Forbidden City was no easy task. The production team had to go through months of negotiations with the Chinese government, ensuring they would follow strict filming guidelines. Certain areas were completely off-limits, and the crew had to be extremely careful not to disturb or damage anything. The result, however, was breathtaking, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to film in a location that carried centuries of history. But even more breathtaking than the Forbidden City was the Wudong Mountains, the setting for one of the most powerful training sequences in the film. The moment Dre and Mr. Han travel to the Wudong Mountains is a turning point in the film. This is where Dre stops seeing kung fu as just a way to fight and starts to understand its deeper meaning. The mist-covered peaks, the ancient temples built into the cliffs, the monks practicing their art in perfect harmony with nature. This place is where kung fu was born, and Dre can feel it in the air. One of the most mesmerizing shots in the film comes during this sequence. Dre, standing at the edge of a rock ledge, imitating the movement of a cobra, with the entire world stretching out below him. This scene was not created with CGI. It was real. Jaden Smith was truly standing on that ledge, surrounded by the beauty of the Wudong Mountains. The mist, the wind, the silence, it was all natural. There was no Hollywood trickery, just the raw beauty of one of the most sacred places in martial arts history. The cinematography here is different from the rest of the film. The city, which was once overwhelming and chaotic, is now far away. The camera moves slowly, calmly, reflecting the peace that comes with this place. The natural lighting, the soft colors, the rhythmic way Dre moves, it all shows how much he has grown. But the most powerful setting in the film is not a famous landmark. It is Mr. Han's workshop. This small, cluttered space, filled with old car parts and dusty tools, becomes the most emotionally charged location in the entire film. This is where Mr. Han's secret is revealed, the truth about his past, the tragedy that left him broken, the reason he has lived in isolation for so long. The cinematography here is intimate, heavy, suffocating. The camera moves in close, capturing every detail, the rust on the car, the photographs of a life that no longer exists, the reflection of pain in Mr. Han's eyes. And when the scene reaches its climax, when Mr. Han, lost in grief, begins practicing kung fu in the wreckage of his past, it is not just a fight scene. It is a man battling his own demons. And Dre, in that moment, understands. The relationship between setting and character is what makes this film so immersive. Every location, from the bustling streets of Beijing to the quiet solitude of the Wudong Mountains, mirrors Dre's personal journey. Even the color palette of the film changes as Dre evolves. At the beginning, the colors are muted, washed out. Beijing feels distant, cold, unwelcoming. The harsh reds and grays of the city dominate the screen. But as Dre becomes stronger, as he starts to understand himself, the film's color scheme shifts. The greens of the mountains, the warm golden light of the setting sun, the deep blues of the sky, they become more vibrant, more alive. By the time Dre reaches the final tournament, the film's visual style has fully transformed. The setting is now filled with energy, movement, excitement. The arena, once a place of fear, now feels like a place where he belongs. The camera movements here are sharp, dynamic, fast-paced, reflecting the intensity of the battle. Every strike, every counter, every moment of tension is heightened by the cinematography. And when Dre delivers the final Cobra kick, the way the scene is filmed makes it feel legendary. The slow motion, the silence before impact, the way time seems to stop just for a second, it all creates an unforgettable moment that feels earned. In the end, The Karate Kid, 2010, is not just about kung fu. It is about how our surroundings shape us, how places can break us or make us stronger. From the crowded streets of Beijing to the sacred stillness of the Wudong Mountains, every setting in this film tells a story. And by the time the final shot fades to black, one thing is clear: this is not just a story about fighting. It is a story about finding balance. Bringing The Karate Kid, 2010, to life was more than just a cinematic challenge. It was an adventure that tested the cast and crew in ways they never expected. From the streets of Beijing to the breathtaking heights of the Wudong Mountains, every moment of filming came with its own surprises, struggles, and unforgettable memories. But behind all the fight scenes, emotional performances, and jaw-dropping cinematography, the real magic happened on set, where actors became students, mentors became friends, and an American film crew found themselves completely immersed in Chinese culture. Jaden Smith was only 11 years old when he took on the role of Dre Parker, but from the very start, he was determined to make his performance feel real. This wasn't just another acting job for him, it was a test of his endurance, his ability to push himself beyond what he thought was possible. He wasn't just acting like someone learning kung fu, he actually had to learn it. Jaden's training began months before filming even started. His father, Will Smith, wasn't going to let him take any shortcuts. As one of the producers of the film, Will knew that if Jaden was going to play a martial artist, he had to earn it. So, he enrolled his son in an intense kung fu training program under the instruction of Master Wu Gang, a real-life martial arts expert. Jaden trained 6 days a week, 4 hours a day, not just learning choreographed moves, but developing real discipline, flexibility, and technique. The physical toll was intense. He suffered bruises, sore muscles, and exhaustion, but he never backed down. In fact, there were moments when the crew had to force him to take breaks because he was so committed to getting everything right. But despite the grueling training, Jaden still found time to joke around on set. His energy was infectious, and he was constantly pulling pranks on the crew. At one point, he tried to sneak up on Jackie Chan and attack him with a playful punch. He never saw it coming. Jackie effortlessly dodged him and flipped him onto a mat before Jaden even knew what had happened. The entire set burst into laughter, and Jaden learned a valuable lesson. You can't surprise Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan himself was not just the film's biggest star. He was the heart and soul of the production. His reputation as an action legend was known worldwide, but for this role, he had to reinvent himself. Mr. Han was not like Jackie's usual characters. He wasn't a wisecracking, fast-talking action hero. He was quiet, burdened by grief, and moved with a sense of deep thoughtfulness. Jackie had to restrain himself from his natural instinct to perform flashy stunts and instead focus on delivering a performance that felt authentic and emotional. But just because Mr. Han was serious, that didn't mean Jackie was. When the cameras weren't rolling, Jackie was constantly teaching Jaden new tricks, cracking jokes, and even cooking meals for the cast and crew. He took Jaden under his wing, not just as a co-star, but as a mentor. He treated him like a real kung fu student, guiding him both on and off the set. One of the most unforgettable moments on set happened during the legendary car scene, the moment Mr. Han reveals the tragic loss of his family. This was the most emotionally intense scene Jackie had ever filmed, and he wasn't sure how it would go. When the cameras started rolling, something unexpected happened. Jackie Chan broke down in tears. The moment was so raw, so deeply personal, that when the scene ended, there was complete silence on set. Even the crew, who had watched Jackie perform countless action-packed roles over the years, had never seen him like this. And Jackie himself was shaken. In later interviews, he admitted that he had never expected to cry. He had always been a performer who relied on action, on movement, but in this moment, the emotion took over. It was a side of Jackie that audiences had never seen before. And it made the film even more powerful. But not every challenge on set was emotional. Some were purely physical. Filming in China meant that the crew had to adapt to completely different filming conditions. The hot, humid summers made shooting difficult, especially during the physically demanding fight scenes. The young actors, many of whom were real martial artists, had to train in full gear under intense temperatures, which led to constant breaks to prevent overheating. And then there was the Great Wall scene. One of the most visually stunning moments in the film takes place at the Great Wall of China, where Dre and Mr. Han train against a backdrop of ancient history. But getting permission to film there was no easy feat. The Chinese government is extremely protective of its historical sites, and the production team had to go through months of negotiations to get access. Once they did, they were given strict guidelines: no damaging the structure, no excessive movement, and absolutely no large film equipment on certain sections of the wall. This meant that some shots had to be filmed with minimal crew members, using lightweight cameras and natural lighting. It was a logistical nightmare, but the end result was breathtaking. The realness of the setting made the training sequence feel even more immersive and awe-inspiring. But perhaps the most grueling part of filming was the tournament scene. Every actor in the tournament sequence had to undergo extensive fight training to make their performances look real. The fights were carefully choreographed, but that didn't mean they were easy. Jaden, already exhausted from months of training, had to push through several long days of filming fight after fight, take after take. The final showdown between Dre and Chung took multiple days to film, with both actors performing complex martial arts moves over and over again until the perfect shots were captured. By the time they filmed the final Cobra Kick, the move that would define the climax of the movie, Jaden was completely drained. But when the cameras rolled, he delivered. The Cobra Kick, which looks almost too perfect to be real, was a combination of Jaden's real skills and wire assistance to get the perfect height. The final shot, Dre launching himself into the air and striking Chang with one swift, stunning kick, was a moment that made the entire production worth it. And when it was over, when the scene was finally wrapped, the entire crew erupted in applause. When The Karate Kid, 2010, was finally released, the hard work paid off. The film became a massive global success, earning over $350 million worldwide and proving that it wasn't just another remake, it was a story worth telling again. But behind the box office numbers and the critical praise. When The Karate Kid, 2010, was finally released, the hard work paid off. The film became a massive global success, earning over $350 million worldwide and proving that it wasn't just another remake, it was a story worth telling again. But behind the box office numbers and the critical praise, the real success of the movie was the bonds formed on set, the lessons learned, and the memories made. Jaden learned more than just kung fu. He learned discipline, perseverance, and respect for an ancient tradition. Jackie Chan, already a legend, discovered a new depth to his acting that he never thought possible. And the entire cast and crew, from the fight choreographers to the camera operators, left the experience knowing they had been part of something special. Because The Karate Kid, 2010, wasn't just about fighting. It was about transformation. And that transformation didn't just happen on screen. It happened behind the scenes, too. At its core, The Karate Kid, 2010, is not just a movie about martial arts or a boy learning how to fight. It is a story of growth, resilience, self-discovery, and the power of mentorship. Beneath every punch, every stance, and every training montage, there is something deeper, a journey of transformation, told through rich themes and powerful symbolism that shape the characters and their struggles. The most prominent theme that drives the entire story is overcoming adversity. From the moment Dre Parker steps foot in China, he is an outsider, someone who does not belong. He does not speak the language, he does not understand the customs, and, worst of all, he is immediately targeted by those stronger than him. Chang and his gang make it clear, Dre is not welcome, and they will make sure he knows it. This is more than just schoolyard bullying. The fights in The Karate Kid, 2010, are not simply about dominance. They are about erasing someone's confidence, breaking them so they never stand up again. When Chung beats Dre in front of Mei Ying, it is not just about hurting him physically, it is about humiliating him, making him feel like he has no power, no control over his own fate. But that is what makes Dre's story so compelling. He does not give up. Even when he is beaten down, even when the fear sets in, he refuses to run away. His journey is not just about learning kung fu, it is about learning to stand tall, even when the world tells him he is not strong enough. This leads to another key theme, discipline versus raw strength. Master Lee, the ruthless instructor who teaches Chang and his gang, represents one philosophy: strike first, show no mercy, dominate your opponent. His version of kung fu is about control through fear, about crushing those who are weaker. Chang and his fellow students follow this without question, because they have been conditioned to believe that power comes from force. But Mr. Han teaches something different. Kung fu is not about fighting, it is about balance. From the very first training scene, this theme is reinforced. Dre does not begin by learning how to punch or kick. He begins by learning how to move, how to control his body, how to focus his energy. The jacket on, jacket off routine is more than just repetition. It is a lesson in patience, in muscle memory, in understanding that true strength comes from within, not from aggression. The entire film builds up to the contrast between these two philosophies. When Dre and Chang meet in the final fight, it is not just a battle between two kids, it is a battle between two ideologies. Chang has been taught to dominate, to attack without thought, to destroy his opponent. But Dre? He has learned discipline, control, and how to redirect his opponent's energy. And in the end, that is what wins. Symbolism is woven into the very fabric of the movie, often in ways that audiences may not even notice at first. One of the most powerful symbols in the film is the concept of the cobra. When Dre and Mr. Han travel to the Wudong Mountains, Dre watches in awe as a female kung fu practitioner balances perfectly, mirroring the movements of a cobra. The snake does not strike first. It moves with grace, with patience. It waits for the perfect moment. This moment foreshadows Dre's final move in the tournament, the legendary Cobra Kick. The Cobra is not an aggressor, but a master of precision. It represents how true strength is not about how hard you hit, but how well you understand your opponent and yourself. Another deeply symbolic moment comes in Mr. Han's workshop. When Dre stumbles upon the wreckage of Mr. Han's car, it is more than just a tragic backstory. It is a physical manifestation of Mr. Han's pain. The car is still there, untouched, frozen in time. The photographs of his family remain, gathering dust. Mr. Han has not moved on. He is trapped in the past, reliving the worst day of his life over and over again. And when Mr. Han, overcome with grief, begins practicing kung fu in a frenzy of sorrow and rage, it is not a training session. It is a fight against his own demons. Dre's presence in his life represents something more than just a student. He is the catalyst for healing. It is not just Dre who is learning from Mr. Han. Mr. Han is learning from Dre. For the first time, Mr. Han has someone to teach again, someone to pass his knowledge to, someone who forces him to step out of the past and back into the present. This theme of healing through mentorship is one of the most underrated yet powerful aspects of the film. The color palette of the film also plays a significant symbolic role. At the beginning, the tones are muted: gray cityscapes, dimly lit apartment interiors, dull blues and browns that emphasize Dre's loneliness. The world feels cold, foreign, overwhelming. But as Dre grows, as he trains, as he starts to feel more confident, the colors change. The Wudong Mountains introduce lush greens, golden sunsets, rich earthy tones that contrast with the harshness of the city. By the time Dre reaches the final tournament, the setting is bright, full of energy, alive. The stadium is a symbol of transformation, the place where everything comes together. This shift in color reflects Dre's personal journey. He starts in an unfamiliar, hostile world, but by the end, he has found his place, his purpose, his balance. The film also explores the theme of respect, not just between student and teacher, but between rivals. Throughout the film, Chung shows nothing but hostility toward Dre. He does not see him as an equal, because he has been taught that only the strong deserve respect. But the final moment, after Dre lands the Cobra Kick, changes everything. In a moment of silent acknowledgement, Chung bows to Dre. It is not just a sign of defeat. It is a sign of respect. Chung has spent the entire movie believing he is superior, believing that Dre is weak. But in that moment, he realizes the truth. Strength is not just about power. It is about resilience, about heart, about knowing when to stand and when to yield. By bowing, Cheng is not just recognizing Dre as a worthy opponent, he is rejecting the toxic lessons he has been taught. And that, more than any fight or victory, is the true triumph of the movie. Ultimately, The Karate Kid, 2010, is a film about more than just martial arts. It is about finding strength in adversity, about the power of mentorship, about knowing when to fight and when to stand still. It is about learning that real power is not about how hard you hit, but how well you understand yourself and the world around you. And it is about balance. At the heart of the film was Jaden Smith, stepping into the shoes of Dre Parker, a role that required more than just acting skills. It demanded physical endurance, deep emotional depth, and an ability to carry an entire film at just 11 years old. Jaden didn't just perform. He transformed. His preparation for the role was intense, and interviews with Jaden himself revealed just how much effort went into becoming Dre Parker. He wasn't just pretending to learn kung fu. He actually trained for months under the guidance of professional martial artists. He endured a strict training regimen, working 6 days a week, 4 hours a day, pushing himself beyond what many expected. In multiple interviews, Jaden admitted that there were days when his body was completely exhausted. There were injuries, sore muscles, and moments of frustration, but through it all, he kept going. He later recalled, "I wanted to prove that I could really do it, that I wasn't just acting. It was important to me that people believed in Dre's journey." But Jaden's biggest supporter throughout the process wasn't just his father, Will Smith, who produced the film. It was his co-star and mentor, Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan's casting as Mr. Han was a game-changer for the film. Unlike his usual action-packed comedic roles, this film demanded something entirely different from him: subtlety, restraint, deep emotional weight. And Jackie delivered one of the most heartfelt performances of his career. During press interviews, Jackie spoke about how much this role meant to him. "This was different for me," he said. "I had to hold back. Mr. Han is not like my usual characters. He is quiet. He is in pain. And I had to show that without saying too much." One of the biggest surprises of the film came from Jackie's performance in the car scene, the heartbreaking moment where Mr. Han breaks down, revealing his tragic past. When the cameras rolled, something unexpected happened. Jackie began to cry. It wasn't in the script. It wasn't something he planned. The moment just happened, raw and unfiltered. Even Jaden, watching from the side, later admitted that he was stunned. "I had never seen Jackie like that before," he recalled. "It was real. Everyone on set just stopped because we could all feel it." This was one of the defining moments of the film. Jackie Chan, the action star known for his stunts and comedic energy, had delivered one of the most emotionally powerful scenes of his entire career. But Jackie wasn't just Jaden's co-star, he became his real-life mentor. Behind the scenes, Jackie took Jaden under his wing, guiding him not just through martial arts training, but through life lessons on set. Jackie made sure that Jaden understood the philosophy of Kung Fu, not just the physical movements. He emphasized respect, patience, and the importance of discipline, values that extended beyond the film itself. Jackie's wisdom left a lasting impression on Jaden. Years later, he still credits Jackie as one of the biggest influences in his life. "Jackie is more than a legend," Jaden once said. "He's one of the greatest teachers I've ever had." The supporting cast also played key roles in bringing the film's world to life. Taraji P. Henson, known for her powerhouse performances in dramatic roles, brought warmth and humor as Sherry Parker, Dre's mother. Taraji's chemistry with Jaden felt natural, heartfelt, and deeply authentic. Their interactions, filled with playful teasing and emotional support, added a layer of realism that grounded the film's larger-than-life journey. In interviews, Taraji spoke about how much she enjoyed playing this role, especially because of her bond with Jaden. "I treated him like my own son on set," she said. "I wanted our connection to feel real, to show that single moms can be strong, loving, and funny all at the same time." But one of the most unexpected breakout stars of the film was Zhenwei Wang, the young actor who played Chang, Dre's ruthless rival. Zhenwei was not just an actor. He was a real-life martial artist, trained in traditional Chinese Kung Fu since he was 4 years old. His movements were sharp, disciplined, and aggressive, making him the perfect choice for the role. Despite playing the film's primary antagonist, Zhenwei was actually one of the kindest and most disciplined people on set. Interviews with the cast revealed that, despite the intense fight scenes, he and Jaden became close friends off-screen. During one interview, Jaden laughed as he recalled a moment when Zhenwei accidentally hit him too hard during a fight scene. "I was like, dude, that actually hurt," and he just kept apologizing over and over again. Audiences, however, were stunned by Zhenwei's performance. Many assumed that he had been acting for years, but in reality, this was his first major film role. His portrayal of Chung was so intimidating, so controlled, that it left a lasting impression. And then, there was the final fight scene. Every actor involved in the tournament sequence had to train rigorously to make their fights look authentic. The tournament was filmed over multiple days, with long hours of intense choreography. And by the time it was finished, everyone was physically exhausted, but proud. Audiences around the world responded with overwhelming enthusiasm. The film grossed over $350 million worldwide, making it one of the highest-grossing martial arts films of all time. Critics praised the performances, with particular attention to Jaden's dedication, Jackie's emotional depth, and the stunning cinematography. But the biggest reaction came from fans. Many who had grown up with the original 1984 Karate Kid were skeptical at first. Could this new version capture the magic of the original? But once the film was released, something amazing happened. Audiences embraced it. They saw that it wasn't just a remake, it was its own story, filled with heart, emotion, and powerful lessons. The film resonated with young audiences, martial arts enthusiasts, and longtime fans of the franchise. People saw themselves in Dre's struggles, Mr. Han's pain, and the ultimate message of perseverance. One of the most touching moments came when Ralph Macchio, the original Karate Kid, was asked about the film. Instead of rejecting it, he praised it. "It's a different take, but it keeps the same heart," he said. "It tells a great story, and that's what matters." Jackie Chan later revealed that The Karate Kid, 2010, remained one of his most personally meaningful films. Not because of the action, not because of the fights, but because of the lessons it taught. The film, at its core, was about more than just learning how to fight. It was about discipline, growth, balance. And for both the cast and the audiences, it became something unforgettable. The journey of The Karate Kid, 2010, is more than just a movie about learning to fight. It is about transformation, resilience, and the power of discipline. From the moment Dre Parker arrives in China, lost and uncertain, to the final moment where he stands victorious in the tournament, the film takes us on a deeply emotional and visually stunning journey. It is a story of a boy finding his place in a world that initially rejects him, and a mentor rediscovering his purpose through a student who refuses to give up. Throughout this deep dive, we've explored how The Karate Kid, 2010, stands apart from its predecessor while still honoring the spirit of the original. Instead of simply recreating Daniel LaRusso's story, it carves out its own path. Because in the end, that is what Kung Fu, and life, is all about. Bringing The Karate Kid, 2010, to life was about more than just reimagining a beloved classic. It was about crafting an experience that felt visceral, immersive, and emotionally powerful. Every decision in the filmmaking process, from cinematography to sound design to editing, was made with a singular purpose: to make the audience feel Dre Parker's journey as if they were experiencing it alongside him. From the moment the film begins, the visual storytelling does more than just set the stage. It puts the audience inside Dre's world. The early shots of Detroit contrast heavily with what follows, creating a sense of familiarity before Beijing swallows him whole. The shift in setting is not just a change in location, it's a change in the film's entire energy. When Dre and his mother arrive in China, the cinematography makes Beijing feel overwhelming, chaotic, and foreign. The city is shot with wide, towering angles, making Dre look small and insignificant in comparison to the endless movement of people, the vast cityscape, and the language barrier he cannot penetrate. The camera follows him as he navigates this new world, often keeping him slightly off-center, a visual representation of how out of place he feels. But as Dre begins to train, something changes. The cinematography begins to tighten, shift, and evolve. The film subtly moves from distant, isolating shots to more intimate framing, creating a sense of closeness, confidence, and control. When Dre first begins training with Mr. Han, the camera captures his frustration. His movements feel stiff, his world still unfamiliar. But as the film progresses, the shots become smoother, more fluid, reflecting Dre's transformation. One of the most striking uses of cinematography in the film is found in the Wudong Mountains sequence. This is a turning point, both visually and emotionally. For the first time, Dre steps away from the noise of the city and into a world that feels ancient, peaceful, and powerful. The cinematography changes dramatically. Gone are the crowded city streets and the harsh urban lighting. Instead, The camera embraces the vast openness of the mountains, the serenity of nature, and the deep history that lingers in every stone. Long, sweeping shots capture the beauty of the temples, the mist rolling over the peaks, the monks practicing their art in complete silence. The entire sequence is slower, more meditative. It visually reinforces what Mr. Han has been teaching all along. Kung Fu is not just about fighting. It is about balance. The fight choreography, another key filmmaking element, was designed to feel raw and realistic while maintaining a cinematic impact. Every fight scene is shot differently based on who is fighting and where Dre is in his journey. In the early fights, when Dre is outmatched by Cheng and his gang, the fights are filmed chaotically, with fast, disorienting cuts that make it hard to follow the action. This makes the audience feel what Dre feels: overwhelmed, powerless, unable to keep up. But as Dre begins to improve, so does the way the fights are filmed. The editing slows down. The camera moves more deliberately. The choreography is shot in a way that highlights Dre's growing control over his body. This shift is most evident in the final tournament sequence. Here, every move is given space to breathe. The camera doesn't rush. It allows the audience to see and feel the impact of every strike. The tournament sequence is also where sound design becomes a major storytelling tool. Throughout the film, the soundscape of Beijing is loud, chaotic, filled with honking cars, shouting vendors, and the constant hum of an unfamiliar language. But when Dre steps onto the tournament mat, the world goes silent. The crowd fades into a muffled background. The only thing we hear is the rhythmic sound of breathing, the shuffling of feet, the momentary rush of air as a strike is thrown. This auditory shift creates an intense, almost meditative atmosphere. The fight is no longer just about winning. It is about focus, about discipline, about Dre proving to himself that he belongs here. The editing in the tournament sequence is another brilliant tool used to amplify tension. The slow-motion moments are not overused but strategically placed to highlight key emotional beats. When Dre lands a crucial hit, the moment is drawn out, not just to emphasize the action, but to show how much every move means. The final Cobra kick is filmed in a way that makes it feel almost mythical. Everything slows down. The sound fades away. Dre leaps into the air, the camera tracking his every movement with almost supernatural precision. It is not just a kick, it is a moment of transformation, a symbol of his journey, a final statement that he has truly mastered both himself and his fears. Lighting is another critical filmmaking technique that helps tell Dre's story. In the beginning, Beijing is filmed with harsh lighting, strong contrasts, and colder tones. The world feels unforgiving, unwelcoming. Dre's apartment is dimly lit, the school hallways cast in shadow, the training sequences at first filled with gray hues. But as Dre grows, the lighting shifts. The Wudong Mountains are bathed in warm, golden light. The training montages become brighter, filled with the sun reflecting off temple rooftops, symbolizing Dre's progress. By the time the final fight arrives, the tournament is lit with bright, almost heavenly overhead lights. This is Dre's moment in the spotlight, his chance to stand in a place where he was never supposed to belong. Music is another essential element of The Karate Kid, 2010, and the film score, composed by James Horner, plays a huge role in shaping its emotional weight. The music follows Dre's arc perfectly. Early in the film, the score is tense, uncertain, often punctuated by long silences that mirror Dre's discomfort. But when the training begins, the music shifts. It becomes rhythmic, almost hypnotic, reflecting the repetitive yet powerful nature of Dre's lessons. By the final tournament, the score is soaring, triumphant, swelling at just the right moments to make the audience feel the full weight of Dre's journey. The film's use of hip-hop and contemporary music also helps bridge the gap between Dre's world and China. The inclusion of songs like Remember the Name by Fort Minor and Never Say Never by Justin Bieber and Jaden Smith grounds the film in a modern, youthful energy. This blend of traditional Chinese instrumentals and contemporary beats mirrors Dre's own experience, straddling two worlds, learning how to integrate them into something new. When The Karate Kid, 2010, finally hit theaters, it exceeded expectations both critically and financially. Audiences around the world connected with its story, its characters, and its emotional depth. The film grossed over $350 million worldwide, making it one of the highest-grossing martial arts films of all time. Its success was a testament not just to the performances or the legacy of the original, but to the meticulous craftsmanship behind every frame. Every shot, every sound, every movement in The Karate Kid, 2010, was designed to draw the audience into Dre's world, to make them feel his struggles, his victories, his journey towards self-discovery. It was not just a remake. It was a cinematic experience. And long after the final scene fades, the lessons of the film, about perseverance, balance, and the true meaning of strength, remain. The cast of The Karate Kid, 2010, was more than just a group of actors. Throughout this deep dive, we've explored how The Karate Kid, 2010, stands apart from its predecessor while still honoring the spirit of the original. Instead of simply recreating Daniel LaRusso's story, it carves out its own path, relocating the journey to China, immersing the audience in a new culture, and presenting Kung Fu not just as a fighting style, but as a way of life. This shift makes the film feel fresh, giving us a deeper connection to Dre's struggles as he is not just a kid in a new school, but an outsider in a foreign land. We saw how Jaden Smith committed himself entirely to the role of Dre Parker, undergoing months of rigorous Kung Fu training, learning discipline, and pushing himself beyond what many expected of him at such a young age. His dedication paid off, making Dre's journey feel authentic, raw, and inspiring. And then, of course, there was Jackie Chan's unforgettable performance as Mr. Han. A character unlike any he had played before, Mr. Han was not the fast-talking, acrobatic fighter that audiences were used to seeing. Instead, he was broken, quiet, filled with sorrow, and through his bond with Dre, he found healing. Jackie Chan's emotional depth, particularly in the now-famous car scene, showed a side of him that no one had seen before, proving that he was not just a martial artist, but a truly gifted actor capable of delivering deeply moving performances. The Karate Kid, 2010, is more than just a remake. It's a deeply engaging story about resilience, discipline, and self-discovery. From its breathtaking cinematography to its emotional depth, the film takes audiences on a journey that is both exhilarating and heartfelt. Its success was not simply due to its connection to the beloved 1984 classic, but because it stood on its own, introducing a fresh take on the underdog story while respecting the core themes that made the original so special. At its heart, the film is about personal growth. Dre Parker, played by Jaden Smith, is not a natural-born fighter. He is not physically imposing, nor does he have any previous knowledge of martial arts. He is just a kid trying to navigate a world that seems completely against him. From the moment he arrives in Beijing, he is an outsider, a young American boy thrown into an unfamiliar culture where even the simplest interactions feel like a challenge. Dre's struggle is not just about learning how to fight. It's about learning how to stand up for himself, how to adapt, and how to find strength within. His journey is filled with setbacks, frustration, and moments of despair, but what makes him an inspiring protagonist is his refusal to give up. Even when he is beaten down, even when his confidence is shattered, he finds the will to keep going. Much of this resilience comes from his relationship with Mr. Han, played by Jackie Chan. Unlike the wise and upbeat Mr. Miyagi from the original film, Mr. Han is a man weighed down by tragedy. He does not seek out a student, nor does he initially want to teach Dre. He is a man living in the past, consumed by grief and guilt, and training Dre forces him to confront his own pain. One of the most powerful aspects of the film is how it portrays the mutual healing between student and teacher. While Dre is learning Kung Fu, Mr. Han is relearning what it means to live. Their bond is more than just that of mentor and student. It is a relationship built on trust, shared pain, and ultimately, redemption. The way Kung Fu is presented in the film is another aspect that sets it apart. In the original Karate Kid, Daniel LaRusso learns karate, a Japanese martial art. In this version, Dre learns Kung Fu, a Chinese martial art that is rooted not just in self-defense but in philosophy, balance, and self-discipline. Mr. Han's method of teaching is not about fighting. It is about understanding movement, controlling energy, and mastering one's own emotions. This is best exemplified in the jacket on, jacket off training sequence. What seems like a pointless exercise at first slowly becomes a lesson in muscle memory, discipline, and patience. This is a recurring theme throughout the film. Things are not always what they seem. Dre starts out believing Kung Fu is simply about throwing punches, about hitting harder than his opponent. But as he trains, he realizes that true strength comes from control, from knowing when to move and when to stand still. The cinematography plays a huge role in reinforcing these themes. At the beginning of the film, Beijing is portrayed as overwhelming, foreign, and isolating. The camera frequently frames Dre as small against the massive cityscape, lost in a sea of unfamiliar faces. The sound design enhances this feeling. The noise of the city is loud, chaotic, unfiltered, mirroring Dre's discomfort. But as Dre trains, as he finds his rhythm, the way the city is filmed begins to change. The shots become more intimate, more controlled. Beijing is no longer an enemy. It becomes a place of growth. By the time he reaches the Wudong Mountains, the visuals shift completely. The natural landscapes, the stillness of the temple, the slow and deliberate movements of the monks, it all reflects the peace and focus that Dre is beginning to understand. This is why the Wudong Mountain sequence is one of the most powerful moments in the film. It is where Dre stops seeing Kung Fu as just a way to fight back and starts to understand it as an art form, as a philosophy, as something bigger than himself. The Cobra stance scene is one of the film's most memorable moments, not just because of its visual beauty, but because of what it represents: Dre's transformation from a scared, frustrated boy to someone who has found balance. The importance of balance extends beyond just Dre's journey. It is a key theme for Mr. Han as well. His past has left him emotionally broken, and he has spent years avoiding the world. Training Dre forces him to confront his grief, to step out of the shadows, to reconnect with life. When Dre sees Mr. Han breaking down in front of his wrecked car, it is the first time he realizes that his mentor is human, that he carries pain just as he does. This scene is not just about Mr. Han's grief, it is about breaking cycles. Mr. Han has been stuck in a loop of sorrow, replaying the past over and over again. Teaching Dre gives him a way forward, a new purpose, and by the end of the film, both of them have found something they were missing. The final tournament is where everything comes together. Every lesson, every setback, every painful moment Dre has endured has led to this. The fight choreography here is incredibly well executed, with each movement reflecting Dre's growth. Unlike earlier in the film, where fights were chaotic and unbalanced, Dre is now in control. His movements are sharp, disciplined, and filled with purpose. The slow-motion shots, the intense sound design, and the electrifying score heighten the tension, making every strike feel monumental. And then comes the final kick, the Cobra stance. The way this moment is filmed makes it feel legendary. The entire arena fades away, the world slows down, and in that moment, Dre is completely in control. It is not just about winning, it is about proving to himself that he is no longer afraid. When Cheng, the bully who tormented Dre throughout the film, bows to him in respect, it is one of the most powerful moments in the entire movie. It is not just an acknowledgement of defeat, it is a shift in perspective, a realization that strength is not about cruelty, but about honor. The film's impact on audiences was profound. Many who had grown up with the original Karate Kid were skeptical at first, wondering if a remake could capture the same magic. But when the film was released, it quickly became clear. This was not just a remake, it was its own story, filled with heart, emotion, and stunning visuals. Critics and fans alike praised Jaden Smith's dedication, Jackie Chan's heartfelt performance, and the breathtaking cinematography. The film grossed over $350 million worldwide, far surpassing expectations, and solidifying its place as one of the most successful martial arts films of all time. Jackie Chan himself admitted that this was one of the most special films of his career, not because of the action, but because of the emotional depth of the story. In the years since its release, The Karate Kid, 2010, has continued to resonate with audiences. It remains a film that is not just about fighting, but about finding strength in oneself, about facing challenges head-on, about learning when to move and when to stand still. It is a story that reminds us all that true strength does not come from how hard you hit, but from how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And in the end, The Karate Kid, 2010, is not just about kung fu. It is about balance. It is about becoming more than what the world tells you that you are. And that is why, long after the final kick lands and the screen fades to black, this film continues to inspire. We also explored how the film's cinematography and settings played a crucial role in storytelling. From the overwhelming, crowded streets of Beijing, which emphasized Dre's isolation, to the serene beauty of the Wudong Mountains, where he finally begins to understand what kung fu truly means, every location added a layer of depth to the narrative. The contrast between the chaos of the city and the peacefulness of the mountains mirrored Dre's journey from frustration to clarity, from weakness to strength. Then came the themes and symbolism embedded within the film. Overcoming adversity, the difference between true discipline and brute force, and the journey of mentorship. We discussed how Dre's growth was not just about learning to fight, but about learning control, patience, and confidence. Mr. Han's pain and Dre's struggles intertwined, creating a story where both student and teacher were healing each other. The final tournament was the culmination of everything Dre had learned. The cinematography slowed down, the sound design made every moment feel intense, and when Dre performed the iconic Cobra Kick, it wasn't just a move, it was a statement. He had finally mastered both his body and mind, proving that strength is not just about power, but about resilience and balance. We also explored the behind-the-scenes insights, from Jaden's grueling training to Jackie Chan's mentorship and the emotional weight of filming. The bond between the cast, the breathtaking locations, and the intense dedication to making the fights feel real all contributed to a film that audiences could truly connect with. And finally, we examined the film's impact, how it exceeded expectations, grossing over $350 million worldwide, becoming a box office success and a story that resonated with fans across generations. Skeptical audiences, who weren't sure if this remake could live up to the original, found themselves captivated by its authenticity, emotional depth, and stunning performances. Even Ralph Macchio, the original Karate Kid, gave his approval, acknowledging that while the film was different, it still carried the same powerful message. At the end of the day, The Karate Kid, 2010, is not just a remake. It is a story that stands on its own, bringing something fresh while respecting the legacy that came before it. It reminds us that true strength does not come from how hard we hit, but from how we rise after falling. And that is why this film continues to be loved years after its release. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into The Karate Kid, 2010, and want to explore more incredible movies with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We have more in-depth film analyses, behind-the-scenes secrets, and storytelling breakdowns coming your way. So, what did you think of The Karate Kid, 2010? Did it live up to your expectations? Let us know in the comments. And as Mr. Han wisely says, Kung Fu is in everything we do. Until next time, stay balanced, stay strong, and keep watching great movies.